Hello, Nigeria. Welcome to Nigeria Now on Echo Television International, where we keep you updated with the happenings that are happening. We're seeing that already the Spy Eagles are back in the country and they have been welcomed by the president. And then we're seeing that quite a number of things are happening in Nigeria presently. So we'll just keep you updated with a few of those things that we think are very important that we bring to the forefront and then we discuss. You can be part of the conversation by dropping your comment on Facebook and in YouTube as well. I am Stella Elisha Dasham, and I'll be doing the program alongside Rachel Dante. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Stella.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. I'm fine, thank you. I mean, looking at the fact that the Eagles are back
They're
home,
back.
you know, they were welcomed by the president. We've seen congratulations, and
Yeah.
then we've also seen. I think we saw where the captain Ahmed Musa made a tweet to where, or an X rather, on his X, saying that people were bullying,
Yes,
Obi,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
in fact there are other captions saying that he might actually resign from the Eagles because of
Eagles.
that. But then I mean that was just on the spot side. We just hope that they will be able to rectify that, and we hope that with
so.
them coming back home, they'll be able to sit down, see their lapses. I think I said that was it yesterday or so during the morning show. The fact that this will give them an ample or give them an edge rather preparation towards the World Cup.
Yeah.
That is even a bigger one, and I think that should be something that I believe that if we put in all the effort and all that is needed, we'll be able to get the cup if we are willing to. So I just
yeah.
hope and I'm happy they are back home, and then we definitely embrace them. I
We
mean,
will.
we are patriotic citizens regardless of what the outcome is. I
True,
mean, taking
Stella.
second place is not a bad thing.
It's
But,
not a
I'm
bad
happy
thing.
that they
Yeah.
are back home.
I mean, they made it to the finals. That is a good achievement. We knocked out teams we never thought we could, and then we move forward. And then concerning Iwobi, you're still young. It's about being in your top form, and you can. There are people who had such difficult low moments in their career and picked up and then had a strong finishing career-wise when it comes to professional football. So Iwobi should just take it as a challenge rather than seeing it as bullying. This is what you love. This is your profession. Why are you going to quit
People
it?
would definitely
Exactly.
talk.
You are a professional football player. People will bully you. People will say it's their opinion, but it's left to you to just pick it up from wherever. So welcome back, Super Eagles. They did a good job. I mean, there just have to be one winner of the cup.
Of course.
And it wasn't us for 2023 African Cup of Nations. It can be us the next African Cup of Nations. So let's go back, train, re-strategize, and then you never can tell.
Of course, even though we saw even our keeper Stanley, where we heard, was it rumors or it was being verified, where we saw that the club where he's actually working with in South Africa saying that they won't take him in. But I'm seeing that Saudi Arabia is already
Of course, he will get better deals.
Saudi Arabia is already kicking in, so
Yeah.
quite a number of deals will be coming in. So it's just for him to make his choice where he would choose to be going.
Yes.
Well, let's just look at some of the things we'd love to talk about. We'll be starting with labor. We're seeing that they are making a new demand on minimum wage. We will recall last week they gave the federal government 2 weeks ultimatum to actually come up with better ways to look into the issue of hardship in the country. And we're saying that during an interview, the chairman, or rather the president of the National Labour Congress, came out to say that, you know what, with the hardship going on, and if things do not get better, eventually they will just have to, come up with the fact that the new minimum wage have to be 1 million. And we started this conversation in the morning. Rachel.
Yes, we
The
did.
fact that, I mean, if we are looking at 1 million, it doesn't look quite realistic, looking at the fact that as it is presently, as a country, we are running on deficit. We don't even have the needed money that is needed to run a number of things. Not to even talk about the fact that, you know what, they have to start paying 1 million naira. But then, even though we're going to look at it's not a bad thing. I mean, when you're looking at the hardship rate, of course, you'll be tempted to say, you know what, even 1 million should be the minimum.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying that we're not talking about the maximum, we're talking about the minimum, where to start from. You could actually go as far as you can. And I think a number of private institutes even came after them saying that, you know what, that's because whatever the federal government would set as a minimum wage would definitely be the setting pace for other private organizations,
Yes,
businesses to
definitely.
see where they'll pick it up, because a number of private institutions are waiting for what the federal government will set as a minimum wage, and then they will depend on where they will pick their own minimum wage from.
True.
And I remember you and I saying that, you know what, this is not really realistic, but then we just have to look at it on a wider scope. I mean, what are the reasons beyond the hardship, of course, which is a valid reason? What else, what modalities did the labor take into consideration to bring up this
Exactly.
1 million naira as the minimum wage?
So like this is where I'm expecting a better intelligent reason. See, coming out to say a bag of rice is 77,000, the standard living blah blah blah, is not enough reason. Is not. It sounds okay, but it's not good enough reason for you to stop at 1 million. Now, ever since, now I'm not going to the Nigeria where our currency was above the dollar. No, I am taking us from ever since we had a currency that was depreciating its value as against the dollar. Ever since, the minimum wage in Nigeria has never been to the standard of our living. It has never been. Even when we started minimum wage at 30,000 naira, we were still having a bag of rice almost 10,000 naira. That is still not proportional to our standard of living. Bag of rice was at 7,000, 8,000, and when you look at it, that's more than 10% of your income, which is completely wrong. If we had a good standard of living, Sele, a household feeding on 30,000 naira income should not be more than 5%. You shouldn't eat, Sele, more than 5% of your income. Exactly, because there's rent, there's utility bills and all of that, there's healthcare, there's education. So 5% is even too much, literally. So there has never been a time where our income was to the standard of living. That is way back, probably when at the time we had our currency the same as the dollar or above it, and most of us, even Joe Ajero, was not there at that time, and neither are we at that time. Now this is where I was expecting Labour to come and say, okay, you know what, as of 2018, 30,000 naira was made the minimum wage. Now, if you change it at the exchange rate, be at the parallel market, it was $83 income, household or individual, 30,000 minimum wage. Now, at the official market, the difference of like there about 306 naira to a dollar, we're looking at 93. So let's say minimum wage was at about $100 approximately. Now, 5 years later, 6 years later, we're looking at starting from 2018 now down to 2004. This is how you're going to do the maths from Labour and say, okay, you know what? When we had a 30,000 naira minimum wage to a dollar, that means an individual was earning $100. Now, this is what we want from the federal government. We want the minimum wage to be double, from $100 to $200. That is big. Now, when you multiply that to the current exchange rate, you find out that we are having a minimum wage of over 290,000. Now, that is good enough for you to put your feet there and start, in as much as it's still above what I believe the federal government wants to put at minimum. But then you sit down and you do other statistics. What is a lawmaker, a senator, a house or a honorable at the House of Representatives, the president? What are key holders, ministers, directors? Every key political position, appointed position, what is the standard of everybody key earning? Like, what is it? Now, if you are able to have those statistics of what it is, then you can come down to saying, now, if these average offices, for example, or these key high offices are earning from between $800, yes, $800 to $1,000 monthly, then you will say it's only okay that an average Nigeria should be at $200, which means you are at a benchmark. And then you look at other key our income, the deficit, what we are making as a country, income generation, and say, you know what, by looking at all of these key indications, our income and everything, our trade, if the government of Nigeria should do this and do this, that, in as much as we are looking at to 290, that is $200 dollar a month for earning, for the average low minimum wage, then we can say, you know what, we will stop at 250,000 minimum wage, and this is where we stop, because we see that the federal government of Nigeria can pay this money, and then at least it will not be up to the standard of living in the country, because we've clearly said that we've never had a period of time where our and then you put your food there and say, you know what, this is what we will take as NLC, as TUC. Anything less than that, we are not going to agree. When you have this breakdown, every Nigerian will reason with you and say, you know what, the NLC know what they are doing, and we agree. This is what is reasonable at this time like this. But you can't go about saying the standard of living, blah, 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 making it look like it's reasonable. But when you know that for sure there has never been a time where our standard of living was equal to our income and all of that, put a number that you will a figure, a minimum wage that will put the government at their toes, and no matter what, there will be a minimum that they cannot go below. This is what I'm hoping to see from the NLC or the TUC.
You know, just like I said earlier, and you really hit the nail on the head, because there are a number of factors that the NLC and the TUC really need to take into consideration, which you mentioned. Of course, looking at their own side of the argument, they're saying if inflation continues with the way it's going, if the Naira keeps depreciating and all of that, and then we just have everybody just picking sides and then picking speaking English out of way, and then makes it look like, you know what, your own line of argument is really making sense. But then if we want to be realistic, which you mentioned, we just have to look at the nature of the way things are. How much is the government earning? How much do we have? Our expenditure, and a number of things we need to take into consideration. And I believe that, just like you mentioned, even though you said the 250, the government might actually frown on it, but I believe that there is a reasonable way to come up. And in the morning, we remember saying that bringing up this money can only delay this negotiation, because eventually we'll see that rather than civil servants earning this or start getting this money from April, which is when they are supposed to start paying this money, it can actually take it down to June, or before we even realize it, we're already coming to the end of 2024, maybe before the money will be actualized. So I'm just hoping that, you know what, for every time Labour want to speak concerning the issue of the minimum wage, they should sit back and actually think about things through. Think about it through. I mean, what we're about to say right now, will it actually make sense? Can the government afford this? Even though I know that there are things that the government might say they cannot afford, but they can afford. If only we would be seeing the senator saying that, or the Senate president rather, saying that he needs 3 billion naira for car parks. I believe that if we are cutting out all of those unnecessary expenditures, we'll be able to save money. But nevertheless, I just hope that Labour will look at it better. Now we're seeing the issue whereby we're seeing states are actually calling for state policing. We've seen this over and over, the issue of insecurity coming up. We're seeing there was attack in Plateau. You see that we're hearing on Christina. We also saw complaint coming from the Amoteco saying that, you know what, we're having these kidnappers moving from Ekiti, coming into Ondo State, and they have to do their best to make sure that they protect. Remember the kidnap of those pupils and their teachers in Ekiti State, where Amoteco had to send some of the officials over there, their own state policing, that is actually peculiar to the southwest over there, to just go and help do some, you know, checking of the foreigners and all of that. We're saying that they are complaining. That is to say, they need to have state policing. We cannot overemphasize it. I remember you mentioning the fact that it's one thing for our state governors to come out and say, we need state police, we need state police, but then, are you willing to maintain it? It's one thing to start it. It's another thing to be able to maintain it, because I remember it's kind of a way like we've overbeat this, but then talking about security, we cannot say we've said too much about it, because there's no too much talk when it comes to the issue of security. Now, if states are actually calling for the National Assembly for state policing, what are the considerations that the National Assembly need to look into? Because I remember we kept pushing on the fact that there needs to be a bill. Somebody needs to sponsor a bill for state policing. It's not just about words, but then who is willing to take in these bills that will actually, you know, because we cannot talk about food, we cannot talk about economy, we cannot talk about other very important things without talking about the issue of tackling the issue of insecurity in the country eventually.
I just hope that our lawmakers, because this is the bone of contention that states are having now, that this is one of those things that they need to pass into law quickly and immediately, giving them the full force to be able to go ahead, do it as it is by the law, coming up with modalities, templates, blueprint, what will be able to make it sustainable. There shouldn't be abuse of power. There should be, you know, clearly stated, these are boundaries, these are jurisdiction by state police and all of that. And I hope that our lawmakers don't treat this as they did with local government autonomy, because this is, I'm not trying to downplay the need for development at the local government level. We've talked about that over and over, But this is one thing, security. And whether we like it or not, every local government will agree that, you know what, keep state and local government autonomy on the side. Let's talk security, because we are dying every day. We cannot farm. We are being killed. Ask people in Bokos and Mango if their opinion will be any different. Exactly. They will say, you know what, state policing first, local government autonomy can wait, and all of that. So I just hope that they don't treat it like that. Head on. Pass this law. Pass this bill. Help state government to be able to implement this. And then I am loving the success that we are getting from Amotekun. Like, we see how they are on the ground, having the security intelligence, the movement of these kidnappers from one state to another, and we saw how they were able to intercept over 300 criminals and all of that in the states, in the neighboring states, at the borders, and all of that. And it shows you that, you know what, this can be effective. This can be done. This can achieve a significant amount of insecurity. The thing is that when insecurity is at a high level, you need to put every forces to bring it down. There was once a time certain streets in developed countries were not good, and every force was deployed. And the moment peace and some stability was, the need of all of those forces were no longer in place, and it just went back to normality. And that is why when I see our government saying there is need to declare state of emergency, they've been saying it with their mouth, Sele, but what about the action for the state of emergency? It just means that at this period of time, you have to deploy every method, every strategy, whatever it takes at that time to curtail it. Is not going to last forever, because we are not praying for insecurity to go on. Once you deploy every measures, you solve that situation, you restore peace, you put in things to make sure that that thing don't come back, then there's a normalcy that will be retained in that place, and then there will not be need for everything that is put in place. Not that when peace is being restored, the state police will not be, no, but the fire brigade kind of action will not be needed anymore, and all of that, and then they will be able to go back to normal life, just making sure, watching out that, you know what, there won't be another uprise of the same thing. So I just hope that our lawmakers, I mean, we're begging them, Sele, let them
to treat this as one of those
to treat it exactly. If you mean business, and if you've been saying you're going to declare state of emergency on insecurity, this is one of the places you begin to show us that you mean business. Don't be going for break and having few hours of recess and saying you'll be back in another. No, don't do that. Don't treat this like that. Please let our lawmakers not waste time, because now more than ever states need this police, and then it's important for them to know that, you know what, we have legislative guidelines, we have policies guiding this, we have framework that will be able to sustain and maintain it.
But do we necessarily need the permission of the National Assembly to have state policing in our various states?
I think
because the reason why I'm asking that, Richard, is, of course, I remember the former governor of Zamfara State, when he said he was tired of the insecurity in the state, and he said, you know what, he needed permission to let everybody just take arms as far as it's registered. And then we're saying that, I mean, that Moti could actually have theirs, which I said is on the side. We've seen Zamfara recently launch and launch their own state policing. And then we're also seeing other states. I mean, in Plateau State, we had Operation Rainbow as well, and all of that. And then we know that when it comes to security, basically, the state governors do not have so much power as the federal government. But I mean, do we necessarily need our National Assembly? Because it's becoming like, like, this is not the first time we're having state governors bringing the issue of insecurity to our National Assembly, and then it's being treated like one of those things. We hear, okay, we will be declaring state of emergency, and then at the end of the day, it's as if, okay, when things now become a little bit, and then we forget about that whole bill whatsoever.
I believe Sele is necessary. The reason is that if it's passed as law from the federal government level, it means states will be able to get some kind of funding and support from the federal government. I think that's just the main reason behind it, because we know that these states are struggling and all of that. But eventually, when it's being passed from that level, it means that states don't only have to depend on what they have, but will be able to get some kind of support. It's the same thing with the local government autonomy. Once it's certain and for sure from that, it means now the local government money don't go through the state government anymore. It goes directly to them from the federal government when allocations are coming. Rather than all of that, it means now the channel will change of how this funding gets to the local government. So I also believe that it's the same thing when it comes to I believe it's just precisely for some funding from the from
Richard,
the
the
federal
reason why I asked
government.
this question is because you made mention of the local government autonomy, and I clearly remember when that bill was passed, still we saw pen and paper. Local government autonomy, judiciary and legislature, judiciary and legislature also have their autonomy. That is to say that they can exercise their own right without interference coming from governors. We're still seeing that right now, as we're speaking, very few states have actually passed that, because right now the federal government is done. If you're going to talk about local government autonomy, the federal government has no business concerning that.
True.
Because they have passed the bill. So whether we like it or not, each time we are having allocation coming to the state, of course it will come through the state, because we don't expect the federal
But it
government
can
to
be
be
punishable
everybody.
if the state government don't
But
do the
still, we are
needful.
still seeing that state
Because we
government
allow it.
Exactly my
We
point.
allow
You
it,
know,
Sele.
now you see why I'm asking the reason why did we, because believe in me, Rachel, even if we have this thing being signed from the higher authorities over there, from the Senate, saying that, you know what, we are signing state policies.
Yeah.
What if it gets down to the state level and they will see frustration of that?
It's possible.
So I'm just hoping, honestly,
Yeah.
I'm just raising a concern because of the way things are going in our country. Somebody will be saying, okay, the funds that are coming, whether we like it or not, there's security funding that comes into every state, regardless of the situation of insecurity in your own state. We always have security votes coming in. So what are our governors doing about that? Remember when we saw that there is an addition on allocations coming to states? Very few people were aware that
exactly,
they have actually added that.
True.
And governors are not telling us the truth about
They are
what they
not.
do with this fund.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that this should not be one of those things where we see state governors saying that there's no funds. Meanwhile, the federal government is supporting you to actually pay your own state policing, and then you are not doing the right thing.
Yes.
Well, let's round it up by going to the power sector. We're saying the federal government has set a sanction for low-performing discourse. Rachel, you and I are not strangers to Nigeria.
Yeah.
We know the way we've been seeing either one time. In fact, we've had our first 2024 Greek lock where we saw there was no light.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the light was being restored. And then ideally, we're supposed to have about 11 power plants in Nigeria. But the way things are moving, we are having other discos that are not performing, because after generating the light from GENCOs, it's supposed to be transmitted to discos. But then we are seeing that some plants are not doing the right thing. And we're also seeing, I mean, I think we saw why IMF is saying that, you know what, they should even remove electricity subsidy. So Nigerians can suffer more from the way things are going. So it's kind of, I mean, it's been bothering me, and I know it's bothering a number of Nigerians with the way things are moving. We saw where we had multinationals leaving as a result of power. You cannot talk about other things without power. Power is very essential. Talking about development, talking about things moving smoothly, we need power for virtually everything in the country. And here we're saying federal government is coming out to see what? We're not going to be giving 50% of certain money that all of these places need if they don't do the right thing, especially when it comes to, you know, performing as they are supposed to perform. Because since we're having non-performing sectors, we're having people that are performing below expectation of the federal government, and we cannot have a federal government that is spending money and then yet we don't see anything to show for the money the federal government is spending, especially when it comes to power in the country.
When you read further or listen further to the issue concerning this discourse not performing, because we have 11 of them registered in the country, and then when it comes to power supply, so when it comes to distribution at any level of any form of energy, be it water, be it electricity, I mean, of course not fire, but be it water and electricity, I believe that knowing the rate of consumption is important when it comes to distribution. And for these discos that are not performing, I believe that this is where they fail, because the report coming from NARDC precisely for these discos that are not performing well is that, you know what, there are 12 million registered consumers of electricity
in the country.
Sele, that is a very low number of registered consumers. So how do you know the amount that is being now? overload leads to grid collapse. We know that very sure because I don't know the science behind electricity, but I know overload leads to certain kind of
Actually, in fact,
collapse
it's normal when you have
backward.
electricity in your house and then you tend to use every appliances in the house. You see that everything starts, let's use the literal, everything
Yes,
starts
exactly.
glowing. So that
When you have a transformer that is, it outweighs the number of consumption, is also disastrous.
overload
When
is
you
too
now have
much.
overload on the transformers, you find out that it doesn't function. And this is where I believe the problem also lies. Is many other factors, right? Now this discourse are not taking their time to know their consumers, to know where the overload, the overlap is, and all of that, and therefore they will have a problem because it's Nigeria. So like, we are looking at over 200 million consumers, and even if we're going to break down on an average of 5 people in a household, we have more than 12 million households. We have more than 12 million households, and then if you're going to say that, and don't forget that it's not only households, there are individual consumers, we don't even know our numbers yet. There are slums, there are ghettos, there are communities that have electricity and all of that.
Talk about
And
businesses as well.
businesses, exactly, and you only have 12 million and we are over 200 million, and you know what, we are consuming this electricity. So you can also say that, you know what, there is a problem of distribution and knowing what the consumption rate is, and knowing if you are able to give the right amount of electricity that is needed. So no wonder we'll keep seeing these outages, and then this discourse haven't taken their time, you know what, to say this is how many we have, this is what we are giving out, and whether we are taking an overload of distribution. I believe that this is also one very large factor among many other factors why these discourse are not performing, and we see that it's going to be, they are going to take out over 50% of what they are being given if they don't perform very well, and then it's also going to mean bad business also for them and even for the consumers under whichever of these discourse that is not performing well.
Well, Rachel, we just hope that, they will actually do their work, because
We
we
hope
cannot
so.
have money. Just like I said, we need our money to speak for us eventually.
do.
If the government can't keep spending and then you will not go and do your
Yes.
job. So it still boils down to the fact that certain people are not doing their job, because if you're doing your job, you should know how many households are depending, how much of power service you need to provide for Nigeria. No wonder we're having rationing of electricity.
We
You really
do have
cannot tell when
rationing,
you will have
yes.
light, when you will not have. Sometimes I wonder, why should the light be coming at night when I'm sleeping, when I need it in the morning for one
true.
thing or another?
Yeah,
So
we
we
have
hope
that
that
problem.
we'll have this schools that are actually not performing, doing their job, or else, and I mean, the sanction is on them. So we just hope that they will do the right thing eventually. Well, Rachel, thanks for doing
You're
this
welcome,
with me.
Celine.
And thank you also to our viewers and supporters for keeping a moment with us on Nigeria Now. Until we come tomorrow, do have a blessed day.